I know, I've been that. I used to cover things up with drugs, with women, with parties, just with
Escapism.
Yeah,
Escapism.
yeah.
You're listening to the Big Drill.
And welcome to the Big Drill.
Welcome everyone, and as you can see, we have a guest here with us today. Please do introduce yourself.
My name's Mason. Do I say more?
Mason, say no more.
And of course,
You're
we
good.
still have Will with us. And
Still
me.
here. Hi, Ghazi.
Tell us, Will, what are we going to be talking about today?
Well, I'm not going to do too much of an introduction because that's going to be your job, Mason. However, Mason is a member of Pure Gym and amongst some other gyms, I would imagine as well. But that's where we have met and started just generally having chats here and there along the way. And I think you're a very interesting guy, and I've obviously looked at some bits on your Instagram as well, and I think that you've got a lot to offer. So tell us a little bit more about what you do and how you're working and your story.
Well, the short version, so I don't take up the whole time I'm on here, is that I'm currently a mindset coach, an NLP practitioner, and I focus on working with men. The reason for that, I do have female clients, which I love working with, but I realise the need to put my attention and my background and where I've come towards men, to kind of break down the stereotype that it is okay to work. But this could go on really long, or do you want me to leave it like that?
More.
Tell us more.
Tell us more.
So personally, I was very much in a alpha kind of careers. I was a professional fighter. Before that, I was what one would call a bit of a bad boy in the street, always in and out of shit.
Yeah.
And even when I turned into a professional MMA fighter, that was very positive, but yet it was a very stereotypical alpha environment, which nobody ever spoke about, the stuff they was going through, and just I personally was going through shit, and it was easy for me just to keep it quiet because I thought I had to. So when I started doing the work I'm doing now, and I was working with women, I always felt that there was a big gap, because I'd be still speaking to my mates and speaking to people who I come in contact with, and I'm empathic, so I know when someone's going through shit, and I could see the struggle that it was for people to start sharing. I do this work now, and I still second guess myself when I'm thinking about sharing openly, and I've been doing this work for years. So think about someone that hasn't had this space, this platform to share how they feel, so, and I get it. I understand why men don't want to talk, but luckily when I do start working with my clients, we break down those barriers very quickly by normalising the shit. And I think what makes it easier is when people understand that everyone's got shit.
Yeah.
Like bar no one, and I do a talk at this centre in central London, and I start my talk like that. Goes, whether you've been abused, bullied, lost your work, lost a loved one, tough times do not discriminate. And I feel that as men, don't get me wrong, I feel women have their challenges as well, but as men, we haven't been given the permission to openly share about the things. So you might have seen a t-shirt that I wear in the gym, say real men talk, real men struggle, women cry. And it's the truth. And then everyone kind of sees it as if you do any of those things, you're weak. But define weak. I'm a professional MMA fighter. Physically, I'm not weak. I speak about my shit and get through it. Mentally, I'm not weak. So I don't really understand where the weakness comes into it. So that's why my thing is about masculinity being redefined. Because I truly feel that there's strength when a man's able to say, mate, I'm panicking, I'm upset, I'm struggling, what should I do? The strength is that you've decided to do something about it, rather than try and take this by yourself, which is going to take you darker and darker into a darker space. So that's the whole synopsis. I'll get you asking questions so we can
Yeah,
go
yeah,
back and
absolutely,
forth
no.
further.
Well, I mean, yeah, what you said there, I think, is incredibly poignant, and a lot of things that I've looked at and been involved in with regards to mental health really does highlight the need for a change in the perceptions of probably the biggest thing around that I've experienced with clients that I've had and that I've worked with is vulnerability, and the almost what you were saying about kind of asking for help. That's actually sometimes seen as a weak thing to do, when actually it's probably one of the strongest things you can do is to go, I need a bit of help here. And I think the perception of that, especially from an emotional perspective within a male orientated viewpoint, is seen negative. I think it's changing. I think it's the work that you do and the way in which people are trying to move forward now. I think it is changing. I think it's been embraced more. But I think that's probably one of the biggest problems, that asking for help and going, I'm a bit vulnerable here. I have my thoughts on why that might be, but I'm interested as to know why do you think that men find it more difficult to position themselves in vulnerability or ask help?
Because being vulnerable has been defined as being weak or fragile or unable to cope, when I don't see the logic behind that. Like I said before, we've all got shit. So what does being vulnerable mean? It's like I've had people reach out to me about this that say they don't want to talk about it, they don't want to feel vulnerable, and we give it that power. So for example, I'm not going to talk about specific clients, but I've had a client say he's worried about what his mates will think about him. I'm like, okay, cool. Is that why you don't want to speak to him? He's like, yeah. I goes, what about if you own your shit? What about if you own your struggle? How are they going to use it against you? You can't be vulnerable if you're using it. For example, if I'm worried about money or my next career, and I say to my mates, guys, I'm spending all my money, my career's gone to shit, what am I going to do? Fucking help me. There's no vulnerability in that. Whereas if I'm trying to keep it to myself and worrying, that's a power shift right there. And when you're trying to fight against anything, an emotion or whatever it is, that again puts you on a back foot. But when you start to accepting your situation, whatever that situation is, and being okay with it, then you can learn and grow to be okay with sharing it. And once you've shared it, it's never as bad as you think. Ever as bad as you think. I've been in circles with men and I've spoken up men, and I've had clients, and after a couple of sessions I'm like, what aren't you telling me? And then when they share it, they're like, fuck, I needed to get that off. It goes, and
it's liberating. It is a liberation thing.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, I think like the vulnerability element, I think is hard for some people, and myself included. I've been in positions where I've had to really take a leap of faith to become vulnerable. And one of the biggest things I think is a fear of rejection or that judgment, which again, like, if your friends or family or work colleagues, their opinion is is something which obviously affects you. Now the degree that it should affect you is obviously very small. People worry about what other people think or how they're perceived. That's never going to go away. That's part of the society that we live in. But the degree of which people are affected by that, and I think that stops them being who they want to be, authentic, and also putting themselves into that position of vulnerability. The fear of rejection, I think, is a big.
You're right. That and judgment. So I have this thing about judgment, and judgment starts with us. And what I mean by that is, if you'd have asked me 10, 15 years ago if a man was crying on the street, I'd be like, pussy, what's he crying about? And then I'd have thought, I can't cry on the street because I'm a pussy.
Mm.
I don't think that now. Judgment starts with you. So when you judge other people, when we can start to lose judgment of others for how they act, how they react, what they look like, what they wear, anything about them, when we can strip back that judgment, we don't fear being judged. Because we base everybody's actions based on our thoughts. So what we think about a specific thing is what we think they're going to think about us. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's like a mirroring.
It's definitely a mirror.
Yeah.
So when you think, I'm going into the gym, so I've got a client that's overweight. He doesn't want to go into the gym because everyone's going to think I'm overweight. I'm like, yeah, that's because you think you're overweight. You know what I mean? We always think that people are thinking the same things about us. So that's why everyone talks about self-love and all that, but it's so fucking important, because when you can accept yourself, and it doesn't mean accept where you are. If you need to make a change, whatever it is, make it. But if you can't accept how you are, you're going to find it really difficult to feel accepted amongst others against the fear of rejection. That's because you've not yet accepted yourself. You've rejected yourself. That's why you fear the rejection.
Well, that's why some people, when they do surgeries, aesthetic surgeries, it gets addictive to the point because they're not accepting who they are. So they change something and they're like, well, I'm going to change this. And then you get those situations where they've just done too much on themselves and they're 100%. Still not happy.
100%. It's like the saying, if you can't be happy with where you are now, what makes you think you can be happy about where you're going to get to? You know, and there's all these old cliches about acceptance and being grateful for where you are, for what you are and everything else, but these things just haven't just been thrown out for the sake of it. You know, all of these things really do need to be looked into and honoured. And like you said earlier on, the narrative is starting to change slowly, but it's going to take a while because this shit's ingrained. It's a societal expectation of how men should be.
Absolutely. I think you know, from generation to generation, I think it's very clear. If you're honest with, if a man's honest with himself and says, like, some of the things that maybe previous generations of males have spoken to them about, like, and again, it's that kind of thing, like the expectancy to you to, like, keep your chin up, you know, plod on, you know, keep going. It's all right. Just strong and silent. You know, there's that kind of male type of patriarchal expectation that's passed down, where the man of the house is got to stiff upper lip. You know, keeps it going, and the disconnect from emotion, or the willingness to, or permission to let that emotion be seen, I think actually is institutionalized by the family at a very early age, and it has been generation by generation. Don't cry, you look like a girl. No, it's like that's something which I can remember, like, being spoken to by some of my family members. Like, if I got upset about something, my emotions were, I was basically told, that means shut your emotions off. And actually, when you have that conversation with a child that's learning about how to operate in the world, you're basically giving them no permission to be emotional.
And not only that, men are, not all men, many of us are emotionally illiterate. We don't know what to call how we feel.
Yep.
It's like, I'm in a bad mood. That's just like a curtain. Think, I feel shit. No, what's wrong? Where's the pain? I mean, where's the suffering? What's the cause of it? If you don't actually acknowledge what it is you're feeling and how you feel, you're not going to be able to do any work towards it. You're just going to bury it. What are you going to bury it with? Work, gym, pub, drugs, women. You know, it's easy to bury stuff, but it never, ever, ever goes.
It will always come back.
It always comes back. It always resurface and show its head 10 times worse than what it did before. I know, I've been that. I used to cover things up with drugs, with women, with parties, just with
escapism.
Yeah. And I said in a post that I done the other day, my fighting career stopped through injury. I had metal put in my knees just as I got signed to fight in the States. I was thinking, this is it, I'm going to be fine, I'm going into big leagues. Didn't happen. So instead of trying to do rehab, I sulked. And I was on my sofa, I was on a cast for 8 months. So I couldn't really drive until my leg could bend a bit. Long story short, I just had no self-worth. I kind of thought I was a fighter. Everybody loved me because of it. This was my whole, that was me.
Identity.
That was my identity for sure. And with my social circle, professional and my friendship circle, nobody spoke to anyone about this shit. So I can't remember the exact time, but I must have been feeling real bad because I must have Googled something and called a therapist that was near me. And I don't know where that came from, I don't know how I got this download, but it was from the greater good, call it God or whatnot. Someone said, you know what, you fucking need help. Spoke to the therapist and she broke it down to me. She said, you just don't feel that you're going to be able to achieve anything because you thought this was your life. You thought you're not going to be able to adapt or have the recognition in any other space. So we worked for a while, but that was the premise of it. And she was right. I was thinking, okay, I thought I was a fighter. What do I want? But people used to think I was cool. People used to think I was tough. People used to think I was... Forget the shit that was going on inside, the pressure and the face I had to keep on because I needed to be this tough guy. So there was a pressure that came with it, but still my ego loved it. And then when that got taken away from me, I was like, fuck, what am I going to do now? I'm nothing. So it was that point of speaking which made me realise this is some real powerful shit. Talking is, and then I would sort of start playing with the idea of sharing things with other people, first family. Oh yeah, I'm not that happy. What do you mean? And so this is taking a bit of a diversion, but it's still quite important to my story.
This is really good, really powerful stuff.
So anyway, this is when I was going through. I don't know what it was, change. When you just know that I feel most of us have this point in our life where you feel there's something more. You don't quite know what it is, but you feel like, okay, well, there's something more. And I remember I had a mate, and he used to go to church, and he didn't used to drink or anything, and he used to drive me and my mates to strip clubs. He used to see the states we used to get in, and he was just so stoic all the time. I feel like he was our guardian angel growing up, honestly. So one day I called him and I was like, mate, I feel like there's something more. Can I come to church with you? So bear in mind, he's only seen me like fighting in a cage or fighting on the street or taking drugs or at a tea bar. So he was like, what? I was like, I just want to explore this. So I went to church with him and I was like, I'm sure this isn't it. It just wasn't connecting, wasn't resonating with me. And then so I said to him, no, I'm not going to give up, I'm going to try another couple of times. And I remember I said to my mum at the same time, she goes, you've always been a bit kind of spiritual, thinking something else was there. Anyway, church wasn't it for me. And I met my mum in a coffee shop and I was like, Mum, I don't know what to do. She was like, what, this is the first time I actually started sharing with my mum. I goes, I feel shit. Like I've got the car, I've got the work, I've got everything, and there's something more, Mum, I just don't know what to do. And there's a girl sitting next to me, and she was a girl, she was quite young. And she goes, I'm so sorry to overhear your conversation, but have you thought about meditation? I'm like, I've heard of it, but it's not been something. Anyway, long story short, she wrote down this thing I should check out. I've not looked back. That was like 8 years ago, and it changed my life, not just because it was the fact of sitting in cross-legged saying it wasn't that. It was having a practice that allows me to really connect with myself and not try to cover it up with all the abundance of choice we've got to kind of drown out our own minds.
Alone with your thoughts.
Alone with our thoughts. It even happened to me yesterday. Don't get me wrong, I do this work. So my partner, she went out. She out for the day, and I was just sitting on the Sunday. I was sitting on the sofa. So I was watching all the fights and MMA. Finished doing that. Went on Instagram. Finished doing that. Went on LinkedIn. Finished doing that. Went back to. And I was like, hold on, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Why am I trying to feed my mind this stuff?
Yeah.
So I just stopped, literally closed it and just sat down for a minute, went, cooked, done a load of and it was so nice. So I wouldn't have done that before. Not many people like to be alone with their thoughts.
It's tricky.
It is tricky because, well, like even I work with a coach, everyone goes, why do you work with a coach? I go, because I don't know everything.
Yeah.
You know? And even yesterday when I was with my thoughts, my thoughts tried to go down a route I didn't want it to.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, there you go, mind. You're doing your thing again. Okay, where are we going there? And it kind of just lost its traction.
I think that's like, so like, I see a counsellor, and I have done for a decent period of time now, and I've learned so much, and my perceptions have changed, and I think that changing in perception is change the perception, you change the narrative of the story. If you stay in one fixed way of looking at something and don't have the ability to like kind of almost come out as an astral being and look at yourself in a authentic and a reflective way, then you get so caught in that spiral. Like, I mean, for example, you were going from Instagram to YouTube and your mind gets full of noise, and then the noise can really be quite negative effect on then your decision making. So like I was speaking to her the other day, and like the first, like the third, an emotion, a feeling, an emotion is like 30 seconds to 90 seconds worth of biochemical reaction in your brain. So that is an emotion that you cannot govern. You cannot, and what often happens is that kind of period of time is effectively completely ignored. No one wants to sit with that 90 seconds of feeling utter shit, or feeling anxious, or feeling overwhelmed. So people quickly disregard it and fill it with something else and do something else, and they never allow themselves to sit with the feeling. After that feeling finishes, then it's down to your cognitive thoughts, whereby now you're in a position where, like, you just summed it up perfectly. You were like, what am I doing? And you obviously connected with some sort of feeling you had in that moment of time, but you gave yourself allowed yourself to pass through that, feeling it, but then go, okay, mind, I see what you're doing. Now you're in working on your own self thoughts and being able to orientate your behaviour or the next part in the direction that you actually want to. And I find it's really, really important to have, well, for me, to bounce off people authentically, but especially someone who can be very objective. So like your coach, objective, this is going to be some bias, but generally speaking it's a very kind of a position of not being subjective or not having too much like of their own feeling. And the counselling is the same. There has to be an objective nature about it. I find it so, for me personally, and obviously it's nice to hear that you have a coach as well. And I think it's a really powerful thing.
For sure.
And
the reason why and what that thing you spoke about when we have an emotion or when something happens, it's called a refractory period. And what we need to understand is that 95% of who we are, right, by the time you're 35, is just an automated program by habits and behaviours that you've just done so often that that's the way you respond to stuff. There's 5% of your mind that is free thought. Like that 5% would be like, I want to get healthy, I want to lose weight, I want to be happy. But you've got 95% of you on a whole different program. And it's difficult for us to get ourselves out of that. And I don't know if you've heard of Dr. Joe Dispenza, but he mentions the refractory period. So with any given situation that happens, say if something puts me in a bad mood, that period, or however much attention I give to the cause of it, the deeper it goes into my subconscious, my memory. So if something happens, like an ex leaves me, and I really give it a lot of attention, the more attention I give it, the more ingrained it gets into me. And if I'm in a bad mood, that can last a couple hours or a couple of days. What's wrong with him? He's in a mood. If you don't look at that mood will turn into a temperament. So a bad mood is a really long emotional response to any given thing. So if you don't give that response the attention, that mood can go into a temperament. If you don't change that temperament, that can become a personality. So when you hear someone at a coffee shop, for example, that's just mean to you for no reason, you know someone you might work with and just bitter the whole time, they're having a really long emotional response. And then once you're in this kind of pattern of behaviour, you start to accept that as being you. And once you've accepted something for being you, you're not really open to the change. The change seems hard. So this is why when you need to start talking and sort of like being open, like what you said, perspective, it is so key, because if you can't see things from a different point of view, you're going to find it difficult to get out the funk that you're in. You know, and I don't know, that's not where I was going, because you said something before. I'm going off on a bit of a tangent.
That's all right.
You're talking about refractory periods, but there was something else you said.
The afterwards, like the thoughts, you're in control of the thoughts. And you're
Yeah. So a few years ago when I first moved back to the UK, so I lived in Bali for a couple of years, I lived in Germany before that. I was trying to get back into the gym, and so I was going gym early, and I heard my mind in the morning saying, "Oh, it's cold outside, and don't go to the gym.
It's a classic.
Just do it." And then I, like what I do now, I actually call this the separation technique.
Okay.
And I said to myself, I hear you, mind. I hear it. You want to protect me, but you're not serving me right now. And it would still go on. I'll be like, no. I get it, but just... And it almost sounds schizophrenic, but it really does help in any given situation. When you don't feel motivated to do something, it's sort of like, okay, why don't I feel motivated? You're going to have so many excuses. The mind can be creative to stop you from doing something, especially when it comes to seeking help. I've got this. You know, it's not so bad. It's like when you're silencing that inner power, that intuitive, call it, some people call it your gut, some people
instinct,
intuition, some people call it your angel, call it what you want. But we always, not always, but often we try to silence it because it doesn't fit the narrative of what the mind's trying to say. The mind's trying to protect us, but the gut always tells us what we should and shouldn't be doing. That's why that first step, if people are watching this, the first step is actually just trying to quiet that mind and do what you feel you know we need to do.
It's interesting you say that, because I found like what works for me, like a mechanism works for me, is like I'll set the task. The task will make me reach my goal. But if I set the task, I've got this personality where I can't make excuses anymore. So for example, right now I'm doing 100 days of gym in a row. So I'm going every day. I know it's a bit excessive.
Yeah.
It doesn't tell you that one of those times is just to sit on a massage chair.
That is an active rest day. So I'll come in and just do a treadmill or something.
Okay.
But and even the other day, I was thinking, my body is sore. I am tired. I'll just not go tomorrow. And then I was like, actually no, I've made a commitment. I'm going, and now I feel great about it.
Yeah.
You know, so that's my mechanism of dealing with that. I don't know how healthy it is or anything, but it works for me. So listening to the gut is obviously one of the great ways of doing it, but sometimes for me I've said I want to do this.
It's more tangible.
I've got to do it, and I think it stems from, because I do fasting every month, and I always find that when I'm actually in the middle of a fast, that's the 1 month of Ramadan, I'm never tempted to eat. But outside of that, when I get hungry, I need to eat. But then I think back and I'm like, but during that month, even when I want to eat, I don't even think about it. So I think maybe it stems from there. So.
And it's habitual behaviour. You've already told your mind that month food's not happening.
Yeah.
You've actually made peace with it.
Yeah, because I find it strange, because my dad, he was a heavy smoker, or he still is, but during the fast, he just wouldn't smoke. And I was like, well, hold on, how are you doing that? So why don't you just do that outside of it? But you don't, because it's as if that's in command, and you have to listen to it. So I don't know.
It's habitual. Most of the things we do is habitual.
Well, we are creatures of habit, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but we can change our habits and we can change our minds. And those two really important facts seem to be missed in a lot of the work. The good thing about it is that you've got social media and people are starting to share this message more often. The bad thing about it is that we're still a very long way to go. You know, I've recently been asked to get involved in a project, and it's called the Meta. So it's about better mental health, but in construction. A gent reached out to me, and he was working in construction. He goes, "You can't even understand how toxic this environment is." He told me some stories, and I was gobsmacked. I thought being in a gym fight with fighters was going to be bad enough, and it makes that seem like daycare in comparison. Like men totally taking the piss out of each other. We do that in banter, but sometimes you don't understand that not everybody likes it. You know, like I've got mates that might be a bit overweight, and there are other mates saying, "Oh God, you put on some tab." That is just not cool. That's not cool. Why have we accepted that? You know, I had a mate. He got liposuction. Didn't tell anyone apart from me. And I was like, "Well done, man. If that's what you felt like you needed to do, yeah, okay." But it wouldn't have happened if the other mates weren't totally ripping him. So I was part of this group, and don't get me wrong, I love the boys. I've known them for like 20 years since I was a kid and stuff. But some of the topics of conversation, it's like, have you not grown up? I had to remove myself from this group. And I goes, "Why did you leave the group?" I goes, "Because you're not just talking shit now." And they'll take the piss out of each other. And put it this way, if anybody had a problem that was not a safe space, I mean, if you think you can't share with your mates, your closest mates, then what? There's no surprise why the male suicide rate is so high. You know, the amount of depressed men there are out there is so high. And it kind of, it's a little frustrating, but I fully understand it. But that's why I do the work that I do, to try and break down this. And another thing, I recently was on a podcast with a guy, well, not a podcast, it was an IG live with a man, and he brought up, what's the guy's name in 300? The main...
Oh,
King Leonidas.
Yeah.
Or Gerard Butler.
Gerard.
Yeah. Leonidas.
I got this.
He reminded me of it. He goes, "Do you remember how affectionate he was when he went back home to his wife? He told about his struggles, his pain, but yet he was the biggest alpha." It's like nowadays men don't feel that the two things can coincide. I'm alpha as fucking hell. You know what makes me happy? I like pushing myself. I like sparring. I like doing all the alpha stuff. But I'm happy to be emotional. I'm happy to go home to my partner and say, "Oh, babe, it was a bad day. I feel really bad, and like this didn't go well." I'm happy to share about that, because I don't feel that takes away from my masculinity. You know, if you to say to the average person out there, "What does it mean to be a man?" And that was actually the name of the topic, and I had a couple of guests on. There was another guest on who was a fighter friend of mine, still fighting, and he goes, "No, it's not okay for men to cry in public. No, it's not okay for men to share how they feel." I goes, "Is that okay for women?" He said, "Yeah." And that's where we are. And then I've got a female friend on, because we was out having dinner once, and she said to me, "Oh, I just want a real man." And that got me. I was like, what does that mean? Someone that pays for food, someone that looks after the house, looks after financially. What does that even mean? And this day and age, I think most of my female friends are making more money than the men. Like me, I've got female mates making nearly 200 grand a year. And it's weird, because it's sort of like there's a whole power shift. Well, not even power, it's a different dynamic, different paradigm now than we were 50 years ago. But yet some of that old behaviours and expectations has come to modern day, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work. So if traditionally men are supposed to go out, get the money, be strong, be tough, men don't need to fucking fight anymore unless you're competing.
Yeah.
You know, you don't need to lift up all the weights, to be healthy, but you don't need to go out and be the toughest guy in the pack. You don't need that no more, but it's ingrained, and there's still an expectation of it. Women aren't expected to. If I told my partner, stay at home, cook me dinner, have kids and do nothing else, she'd probably punch me in the face. I wouldn't expect that.
You're a fighter, so you should be able to
yeah,
dodge it.
But do you know what I mean? I don't have that expectation, but what it is, we have that on ourselves, and that's the biggest thing.
I've got a question then, because this is something which I have had conversations with other people previously. So, very, very good point that now there is this shift in the setup of the heterosexual relationship that would look to the man not now needing to be the breadwinner, not now needing to be the person who secures financially or leads the charge securing financial stability for a family. Okay, so essentially now the man of the house who perceives, because of generational constructs, that's what his job should be, now doesn't have a job, or perceptually doesn't have a job. So now if you're in this position, the shifting of the paradigm as we knew it and now becoming leaves a no role or a lesser responsibility, maybe even lower self-esteem, maybe even lower self-worth. I mean, how would a man feel if the female of the family was, financially stabilising everything, or had the more powerful job, maybe she was a CEO or something like that? How would he feel? And quite crucially, would he be able to communicate or have the space to communicate those feelings? Maybe that's something that, as society shift, is actually becoming a problem.
Yeah, for sure, but it's case by case. I feel that, I don't think if a man wasn't happy in that role, I don't feel he should accept it. On the same side of the other side of the same coin, if a woman didn't want that role, I don't think she should accept it. It depends how the person cares what other people think. If he's okay with it, this goes across the board, right? Like what I said at the beginning, if it's like owning your shit, right? If I goes to my mates, you know what, my missus just got the best job, she's making £1 million a year, I'm gonna stay at home. And they want to try and take the piss. What are you doing staying at home? I'll be like, mate, I get to do what I want. I would own it.
Yeah.
But some people will buy into that. Oh, am I actually real?
Yeah.
Am I? If you write it down, logically it makes zero sense.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to break that down in some industries or some people that I even speak to. Whereas people put a lot of pressure on themselves through, there's an exercise that I do when we're doing goal setting, and it's called the growth framework. Other coaches will know about it, you might have heard about it. And there's the questions that I ask, and the last question of the goal setting is, whose goal is it? And what I mean by that is, you might say, yeah, I want to get married, I want to have kids, that's my goal, I want to be a millionaire, that's my goal. But sometimes when you check it, it's not really your goal. It's what your parents want you to do, or your peers want you to do. It's the societal expectation is made your goal. But when you get to take yourself away from it and think, what do I actually do? You know what, actually, I just want to go fucking live on a beach hut and just have a little cocktail bar and just chill and surf all day, But we don't honour what we truly want, because of the noise of the world. And again, I do feel like there's a shift happening. I do feel that people are being able to listen to what they truly want and put their needs first, and I think that's another thing that's important. A lot of men, we're not putting our needs first because we think we have to do this, we have to do that. I'm like, well, if you're not happy, you're not good for anyone. Take yourself away. Do what's right for you. And it's not selfish, but for the lack of a better word, be selfish and get your mind where it needs to be, so that when you have got your kids and your wife and your family, you're in better positions for everyone.
Well, there's a continuum, isn't there, of selflessness and selfishness. And I think that I'm a great fan of continuums because they allow for freedom of movement down either end of those continuums, and perception changes the narrative of the story, and sometimes it's actually right on the money to be selfish. And are there going to be some other people pissed off? Possibly, yeah. But if you need to be selfish for a while, then you need to be selfish. But then conversely, I'm very empathetic, and I actually find it a lot more difficult to be selfish than I do selfless. So I almost like have to go, no, I have to be selfish. This is what I want to do. This is how I want to operate, whatever. And I encourage some of my clients to do the same, to think about changing their perception of what is selfish and the reason for being selfish. And then sometimes it might be worthwhile going to being selfless, to laying down your time or your energy for someone else to do good, because actually that kind of feeds back and makes you feel good anyway. Yeah. But unless you can move down this continuum and be aware of why you're at any point on that continuum, I think you can kind of find yourself being either a really selfish idiot or so selfless you just end up throwing your own life away almost, because you're not doing anything for yourself, and then getting upset.
They're selfless in their sacrifice as well. I work with a lot of people, and I often hear, I'm a giver, and I do things for other people. Like, that is at your detriment. If you can't say no, and when you usually unpack why some people continuously say yes, it's for, again, acceptance. I can't say no. They won't like me if I say no. So you're not even doing it from a place of wanting to do it for the sake of wanting it.
You don't want to be hated.
Yeah.
Almost.
You know what I mean? So that's a thing as well. And it's funny. A friend of mine goes, mother mate's so selfish. I'm like, why? Because she doesn't want to do something that you want her to do for you. So who's selfish? You know, it doesn't even make sense. You're putting yourself first. Why shouldn't you put yourself first? If we all done that, if that was our norm, oh yeah, I'm doing this today. They're like, yes, I'm doing this. We wouldn't have the expectation of what other people want from us. You know? So
yeah, absolutely. I find it like, that's quite interesting what you said there, where that person goes, oh, you know, they're selfish because they're not doing that, and then like they have a shift in mood and feel like they're being hard done by. I mean, essentially that is, depending on what the request is, a narcissistic trait. And I think that huge amounts of narcissism exist in society, and again, reflecting back to the fact that this external need for validation from peers, or like an embodiment of heightened status, drives an element of narcissism, where people do kind of push other people, namely empaths, into this position of like kind of doing everything for them. And I don't know what you feel about how like sometimes people can fall into these narcissistic, I know we've gone off on a bit of a tangent here, narcissistic empathic kind of relationships where someone is being absolutely kind of like pushed down and the other person is getting everything they want. And again, that's kind of like a real selfish, selfless, like extreme ends of the continuum, which can be really detrimental to people's health, males and females in both those roles as well. But
it's human nature. It's human nature. So you get people that are naturally givers, and you might not have to. You might not be a narcissist or a taker, but if somebody's always giving you, you're gonna say, okay, yeah, I will. Okay, yeah, I will, without even knowing what you're doing, right? Because give them an inch, they'll take a mile.
I had a question. It is, what actually got you into fighting in the first place? Just because actually before you came, I was talking with Will, and I was just talking about, I just don't know. Like, I'm a fan, by the way. I'm a huge UFC fan, huge boxing fan. I watch it every week and all of that. So I admire what fighters do, but I just can't understand what makes them want to do it, or how they even get into it.
So there are
As a profession, anyway.
3 types of fighters.
Mm-hmm.
Those that fight because they have to.
Yeah.
Those that just love the competition. And the third, what's the third? Brain fog. 1 minute.
Pressure's on.
Yeah, no, because I've had this conversation.
Trying to prove something.
Angry people.
Okay.
Angry people.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was the angry person.
Okay.
And it was, I didn't know what else to do. And I could fight. How I started fighting, I went on this TV show called Fighting Hurts.
Mm-hmm.
This was about 15 years ago now, damn. And it was like the Ultimate Fighter now.
Where like UFC's also.
Yeah, UFC, where you get 10,000
like
applicants, it's a camp.
It's like a reality TV show, but almost for fun.
I know. Why did you look at me?
Yeah.
I understand.
You're not a UFC fan.
Just
I understand what a camp is.
Just for everyone. So everyone in the UK. So I was into MMA before that, and I used to watch it. And actually, first started, I remember, an after party. Everyone was back at my house. 22, 23, watching UFC on the screen, and I was like, fuck it, I'm going to do that one day.
Oh, that must have been really new.
Yeah, that was it. It was just
early
yeah,
stages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Way before it is now. And I say to my mates, I'm going to do that one day. And they're like, yeah, whatever. A year after that, a pal of mine was training. He goes, you should come training with us. I started training. I was good at it. Anyway, I ended up on this TV show, and I was too small for the show. It was for light heavyweights, which was 93 key. At the time, I was about 82, 83 key. But then if I could get over 84 key threshold, they'd get me on the show. But anyway, I was on my way on holiday, went for this audition. They called me up, and my holiday was just of partying. It was literally just drugs, music and alcohol, and girls. And I got a call my last day of the holiday, goes, you made the show, and the last thing I wanted to do at that point was fight anyone. I remember it goes, but you need to put on 1.5 kilograms. So I must have been like 82 or whatnot, or 83 keys. Anyway, I had to put on weight. So I got onto this show, and the guys I was training with, they had been fighting for years, way before me. And it was really humbling that I thought I was good, but I'm going against these guys that are really good.
Yeah.
And it kind of gave me a whole new way of looking at it. It's like, okay, well, I'm in this now. I'm not quitting. Because that's one thing, I'm not a quitter. It's not even a quit. I just...
You want to see
I want to test myself. So I got to the final of it. Lost in the final. The guy was 10 key heavier than me, but he was better than me anyway. Threw me about
10 kilograms is a lot, though.
Yeah. And we headlined a show that was live on Sky One and Bravo. It was good. It was amazing. And it was funny because I think in the first round, my mum was in the. I could see my mum at the front and everyone there, family and stuff. First round, he was an ex-pro boxer as well, and he just went bang. Just got to felt my face go whoosh. And at the end of the first round, I remember going back to my corner, and my mum was like this, and my friend had his arm around her, goes, don't worry mum, I'm fine. And as I said, I'm fine, blood just squirted out.
Oh no.
That's what made me realise this is what I want to do.
Okay.
Because that did not bother me at all. And I went out for the second round, it was great. Third round, I got beat, I got submitted. But even the winner of the whole show got a contract to fight, but because it was such a good fight, they gave me a contract anyway.
Oh wow, amazing.
And then I got approached by a couple of gyms, who do you want to fight for, do you want to come fight for our gym? And I ended up fighting with Team Titan, which is Brad Pickett and all these guys that are my teammates now. And it was just instant family.
Yeah.
And then there was a disconnect between fighting, of what we was actually doing, and the training. We'd go in there and knocked 7 bells out of each other. Then afterwards we were even closer. I feel that if it wasn't for the guys I was fighting with, I would have quit fighting a whole lot sooner. Because I was around, there was politics like in any career. But it was literally that kept me there, helping my mates train for fights, train and keep myself fit. The fighting itself was just a byproduct of, it's like I'm here, so I might as well try and go as far. But I feel the universe kind of hurt me with my injury. Because although I remember I took a dark turn after my injury, I felt like I wasn't meant to fight as a career. Well, I'm doing what I'm doing now, so that goes to show, because, and one thing I've always said as well, every other career other than what I'm doing now, I've always been looking elsewhere to see what I can do. When I was fighting, I set up another company. I had a creative agency. I've worked in tech, and everything that I've done was solely because I just thought I needed something else to do rather than what I wanted to do. I started fighting because my mate was fighting. He said, come down and train. I started another company because my mate was working in that space. So everything was for everyone else. You know, so the only career that I've done, literally without any influence, is what I'm doing now. And for me to be able to get on this path, I needed to remove myself from my mates, from my normal patterns of behaviour. I left the country. We was in Germany. My mates were DJing at a club called Berghain. And on the Monday when we was going back, I had such a good time. It was almost like an opportunity. I was like, I'm not coming back. I'm going to live here. And it's like, oh, shut up, whatever. I think I went back on the Wednesday, went back out on the Saturday and stayed there for 2 years. I knew about one person and didn't know what I was going to do. Had an idea. You know, I had a company in London that was making me a little bit of money, so I was okay from that standpoint. But I remember waking up without your normal things to do, going to the gym or going to the office, seeing him, seeing her, doing that, Tinder, whatnot. With that got taken away from me, that was the first time I was left with my thoughts. Got to the point where I didn't want to get out of bed. I was so fucking miserable. I didn't realise how bad until I got out of it. I got myself in this pattern, just getting up, sitting down, going to the coffee shop, getting my laptop open, being busy doing nothing. And I can't think of an actual defining moment, but something must have switched for me to think this is not good. I've not been happy I was there for 2 years, you know, for at least 18 months of that. I was miserable. I was meeting people, talking out, friends would come over now and then, but it wasn't a life I wanted to live. And when I came back to the UK, I realised this isn't the life that I want to live. So that's when I just took myself away, and it sounds so, again, cliche. Went to India, went to Indonesia, just went around the world and just tried to not even find myself. I didn't know what I was looking for. I just knew I didn't want to be there. And at the time I was still meditating, which was good, and that was helping me. And I just ended up in the mountains of Java, meditating in silence with monks. So ended up doing this retreat where you can't speak, you meditate for 11 hours a day, and it's for 10 days straight.
I've heard of this, yeah.
Yeah, and it was pretty profound because this didn't register till afterwards. When was the last time you haven't spoken a word or someone hasn't spoken to you? Probably never since you've been born, right? Watch TV, you can't read, you can't write. No external
There's no
stimulus,
technology allowed.
nothing at all. It's just you and the mind. You get a discourse talking about the meditation, the chant before you go into meditation. Your mind can play some serious games when you're just left alone with it. So my journey was this. The first 3 days, everything I didn't want to think about, I thought about. There's no escape.
Yeah.
There's no escape. You know, you try to sleep, you can't sleep. There was just no escape from things of my childhood to see my dad die to just everything that I didn't want to do, didn't want to see. Then after that, the middle like 3 to 4 days was just memories. I remembered my mum's first registration plate on her car, B130EGK. Don't know how, I must have been 8 years old, right? I just remembered like my first day of primary school. So everything you've seen in our lives is still there. So it's got, I feel like the brain was like, yeah, take all this shit first. And then when I got through that, I was like, oh, do you remember this?
Mm.
In the final stage, just creativity. It was like, oh, you should do this. How about this? You're good at that. You're good at this. That's how I started my corporate wellness company. I've never had a corporate job in my life. I've always been a founder or just not in corporate. And I decided, well, this is what I feel I should be doing. And I know where it stemmed from is because as an athlete, I had friends that were in the corporate space. They always used to ask me, do you know any PTs? We wanted to get someone in and get our office healthy. And before I went in, I goes, what about sound healing or meditation? I know meditation teachers, get them coming. And that kind of made me realise there was a business there. But it was when I was in this meditation retreat, I thought, okay, well, that's what I'm going to do. So I remember coming out thinking, fuck, I know nothing about corporates, I know nothing about working in the wellness space. But I made it work. Since then, I've got clients at Apple. I work for one of the biggest pharmaceutical companies in the world. I got them to meditate. They give drugs for stress and things that meditation can cure, and I got them to meditate. And I've done that by getting in a great neuroscientist to speak about the benefits of meditation from a neuroscientific perspective, so that they could connect with it and they see the logic behind it and it's more tangible. So then I've got them to meditate. Don't even know how I got into this. Thought I'm just talking a bit about
your journey.
My journey.
Which is
When you
fantastic.
start when I started fighting.
When I started fighting, throughout this whole thing, I still love fighting, but I love not having the pressure of competing
Okay.
and not having the pressure of feeling like I need to fight, because I know what. I don't think people understand what comes with being a fighter. It is difficult, and it's not just the training; it's the ego that comes with it.
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah, it's when you have a loss. See, I lost 3-1-7, so my career wasn't long, right? So I was 7-3, which isn't bad, and it's even when you want to stop, you can't. You know, that's why.
They always come back from retirement.
Yeah, you can't, because you don't know anything else. Like, you've been getting punched for the last 10-15 years for a career. What can you do? And you're not conditioned in any other way for it. So that, again, like what you say, you hear fighters go retire, they come back, retire, come back, and this is why I got forced to retire. And I feel that it was, at the time, it was heartbreaking.
Almost a blessing in disguise.
Yeah, didn't see it at the time. I see you've got to live life forwards. You can only understand it backwards. And even if I turn back and look at my life, I'm thinking, oh, okay, if that didn't happen, then that wouldn't have happened. And now I'm doing something good. There's nothing more rewarding than someone messaging, saying how much if I can help them. You know, it really pokes my heart. I'm like, it is the most, again, rewarding thing I could.
I mean, the sentiment there is exactly the sentiment that I feel when someone messages me, like, and I've coached them through it, and I'm not a coach. Like, I'm probably more in line with your way of coaching than I am with the majority of personal trainers, because it's so important that the mindset is so important, the perception, the feelings that person has. You know, you can write the best training program or the best nutritional program in the world to the point, but if that person hasn't got the space in their mind to be able to apply it and address that and move forward, because they're too busy looking at things which are happening backwards or around them, sometimes that's like the important step to take. And when I get those messages that you know, sometimes they've quit their job and they're now in a different job, or left a toxic relationship and they're now like having a much greater time with people in a more authentic way, or stuff like that. And also they're bigger, stronger, or they've lost weight. All those, the feeling you get when someone messages you and they're fucking elated, they're like, oh, it's so good, I feel so great. That is the most rewarding thing of my job. And I can see by your face, it's definitely good.
You hit the nail on the head because you talked about forward thinking. It's like if everyone says to me, how can I help others? It's just listen. Like you notice since doing the work that I do, you can talk to your friends and they're not listening. They're already waiting for a response to what you've said. They're not being present. So when you can just give someone literally even 10 minutes of your time and just hear them, don't offer advice, don't have any comebacks, literally just sit there and go, okay. You will feel the shift happen with this person because they will not know what it is, but what it is that they have not been listened to since, I don't know, I guess they've had therapy or spoken to a professional. And what you said about forward thinking, if you are going to, this is for anyone watching, if you do know someone that's going through a tough time, tell them to set a goal. Like what you said, that's why it works for you. The reason being, all your goals should be in the positive. What you do want, not about what you don't want, because both of those phrases hold an energy. You know, you don't say to someone, I just don't want to struggle for money no more. Because what that does for your mind, it puts your mind in that space of struggling for money. That's not good energy. If you say to yourself, you know what, I want to make so much money, I want to do this, I want to do that, then you can look at it in front of you and think, okay, well, what am I going to need to do this? And that's a positive energy because you know, okay, there's work that needs to be done. Momentum, and you know it's going to be needed. Again, when I work with a client who's had a hard breakup, I just don't want to think about my ex anymore. Don't worry about that. What do you want? Okay, well, I just want to move forward and always focus on what you do want. Forward thinking is the premise of coaching, but at the same time, it is so valuable. This is a little shift in the way you identify whatever it is that you're going through. It's just to move, as we said at the beginning, perspective. It's a different way of looking at things.
I think when you're listening to someone, and when you're and I mean, I don't know if you found this in your coaching, but I've certainly found it in certain areas. Like I've been training someone, and I think it's possibly to do with. Well, no, it's to do with the parts of the brain that are operating at any given time, whether it's the rational, like the cortex of rational problem solving, or whether it's the emotional part of the brain, which is kind of like taking control. Whenever I have a conversation with someone about something that they want to do or a problem they want to solve, more often than not, they've got a pretty damn good idea about how to do it. I don't really know I don't know how to solve someone else's problem, but I think I've found, in some cases I do, but I've found that throughout coaching, to your point about if you just give someone the time to listen and let them talk, and positive affirmation or like paraphrasing, just to allow them to kind of know that you are listening and absorbing that, it gives them almost like opens their road of exploration and allows them to go, actually I could do this, I could do that. Whatever the solution might be for whatever problem they have, they've almost got the answer, but they just need the permission to execute and pull the lever to see if that actually solves their problem. And the way that I've found that's been really good is just to, like, to your point, just listen, 2 ears and 1 mouth, right? So you listen to what someone's saying, and I think it gives them the, like I said, that permission to then go ahead and do stuff that they want to do, but they've been held back from doing.
Well, it's powerful, isn't it? It's sort of like when you verbalise something, it's like, oh, I didn't even know where did that come from. It's just giving someone that space, because when you're in your head, when you start speaking, it does, more things become clear. Like even when I'm with my coach, and I'll be like, okay, I've got all this going on, Jules, I don't know what I should do first. And she goes, but if you did know, what would it be? Really annoying, like common coaching question. Because if I did know, I'd probably do that first, and do that, and do that, and do that. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
Thanks, yeah.
That reminded me of, you know, when someone's like, they've got two options and they don't know what to go, they have to choose one. And if you just make them flip a coin and choose head or tails, in the moment it's in the air, they will know which one they actually wanted to do.
Or if it goes on the opposite tail.
Yeah,
but
I don't do that one.
It's exactly the same thing. So again, with coaching, it's like, it's not my job as a coach to tell you what to do because you're the expert in you.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's me just to give you that space, have that dialogue to kind of unpack what's going on inside.
I
so
like
you can
that.
actually
Unpack.
see, so you can just see it all out in front of you, and you can say, oh, that's what it is. You just join the dots.
I often find as well, like some people have this kind of thought process of like, well, I haven't got a clue what to do. It's like, okay, well, the worst thing you can do is do nothing. So even if you do this, or if you decide you want to do it and it's wrong, there's always time to change your mind.
Yeah.
There's always time to go, well, that's not working, and also I think one thing with that element of like, people don't want to make a choice, because if they make a choice and go with something and it's the wrong choice, then they see failure as, oh, now I've had to leave that go because it wasn't the right thing, I failed on that. And I think that's part of the coaching element as well. For me, I run like little experiments with my clients. I go, well, they say, well, I want to try that, I go, well, let's run that experiment, see how it goes, and we can talk about it, and then if the experiment's not working, then we just can it, and then we go with a different experiment. And almost like that, allowing it to be seen as a like, I've actually learned that didn't work.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. You haven't failed. You've learned that wasn't the right step for you. That wasn't the right decision for you to make. I think that unpacking that process, I like what you said there actually. That unpacking that kind of, well, it didn't work. Let's move on to that one, and giving people the freedom to just say, no, I'm not doing that. Doesn't fit for me now. I'm going to do that. It's quite a powerful thing as well.
The fear of failure is very real, and there's a quote that I like to say is that the fear of failure crushed more dreams. No, fear has crushed more dreams than failure ever has.
Yeah, nice.
You know, so if people just keep not doing something, so what's the alternative? I've done a post on my Insta the other day. It's like, what's the alternative? You're in a relationship you don't like, right? You can either stay in it, like you can either leave it, or what's the alternative? Stay in an unhappy, unharmonious household for the rest of your life. You're in a job you don't like, okay, carry on doing it. Do you know what I mean? Or change, or what's the alternative? That's a question that I always ask my clients. They go, well, I can't do this. I can't leave. Okay, what's the alternative? Well, I'm going to have to just stay here and be unhappy forever. You know, so when people aren't really ready to actually make a change, they've already expressed that there's something wrong. When you ask them what the alternative is, if they don't do anything about it, that alternative is a lot worse than actually making the change.
Yeah.
You know, so if you do have a client or you speak to someone and go, I hate work, but I just can't leave. Okay, cool, but what's the alternative? Or just stay here and keep hating it. And they think, no, fuck, I have to leave, don't I?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
So I love that. That's like, so for the work that I do on changing behaviours, like ambivalence. So that's kind of like caught in chronic ambivalence of like where you say change talk, but then you follow it up with sustained talk. So you're in this position where you're like, oh, I want to change this, but I can't. So I'm going to have to carry on doing it. I like what you've done there, where you. So that's kind of like NLP. It's NLP, like where you focus on the threat and emphasise the fear of not taking the alternative and presenting to that person stuck in their chronic position of wanting to change but never changing, what's the result of that going to be?
Exactly that.
And that kind of change, like the breaking ambivalence is like what I call it with my clients. And I'm like, kind of, well, you know, you say you want to change, but then you've got this sustain. So how do we remove this element of sustain? How do we remove this obstacle that's kind of keeping you in this chronic state of ambivalence? That's a really powerful part of any change process. For me.
Yeah, for everyone.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, once you've got that, it's almost like it's a tipping point of like, okay, now I see the steps I can take, and then they can move through the rest of the change process. The years I've coached, I've pulled that off really well sometimes, and sometimes I've really struggled to get people through that like ambivalent stage. But it's it's interesting how you kind of like present it as well.
It's
right?
all perspective, right? That's been the narrative of the whole thing.
Yeah.
So perspective helps. Yeah, just change the whole paradigm of any given situation.
Mason, what's your Instagram? Where can people find you on there?
Funny enough, I get this wrong. It's Masons_mindset.
Okay.
Or is it mindset Mason? No. It's
Do you want me to check?
It's Masons with an S _mindset _.
Any last pieces of advice you want to give to anyone that might be watching?
Not really advice. Again, like if you're going through stuff you don't want to change, what's the alternative?
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Did you find it?
Masons_mindset_.
Yeah, underscore at the end.
Yeah. There we go. And what's your program called? Your coaching wellness program?
The 360.
360.
Yeah, it's a program that encompasses meditation, exercise, and coaching from goal setting upwards. The whole program is all about building confidence, motivation, and finding clarity. And it's a 3-month program.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Sounds perfect.
Any closing statements from you, Will?
I just want to say thank you.
You're welcome.
Really pleasure to have you on the podcast and obviously to get to know you a little bit more. I know we see each other in the gym and stuff like that, but this is fantastic. And there might be some things in the future if you want to come back on, if anything's happening, or I think of anything as well. Then the door's always open. I think it's a really positive.
It only took us what, a year to get here?
But yeah, we had COVID, didn't we? That was
problem. That's 6 months of it. Yeah.
Anything you want to add, Ghazi?
No, I thought it was a great introduction to season 3. Our first guest of season 3. I thought it was amazing. And yeah, hopefully you come back on sometime in the future.
I'd be happy to.
Perfect.
All right, goodbye, guys.
Well, that's it from the Big Drill. Until the next time. Cheerio.
Bye.
Hi, I'm Will.
And I'm Ghazi.
And thanks for tuning in to the Big Drill. You can also find us on these platforms here. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can find him on Insta,
Ghazi.92,
and me, Will Hawkins Coaching. The links are in the description. And until the next time we drill deep, goodbye.
Bye.